know your worth, know the qualities that you bring to the table that are unique. I think a lot of times early in my career, I thought, especially sitting in a room when it's just other, just guys and I'm the only woman there, I thought that I needed to kind of be quiet, or like I'd have an idea but I didn't want to pitch it because I was worried about what was going to be said. So I think knowing your value and knowing the unique kind of skill set that you bring, the unique voice, perspective that you can provide, and don't let yourself kind of shrink down. Like, be yourself, bring yourself into that room.
Well, I have the pleasure today of being with Meghan O'Donnell, co-founder of empowHERed. And yes, I'm accentuating the her in empowHERed, and you'll see what I mean when you go to our website, check out our company, because they're doing some great things over there. So welcome to the show, Meghan.
Thank you so much, Larry. I'm so excited to be here.
Me as well. And, listen, I am so, intrigued by the entrepreneurial journey. I think it's so fascinating. We'll spend a lot of time on what you're doing today with empowHERed. But before we jump into that, can you give our listeners a little bit of background about how you came to be an entrepreneur, the journey leading up to it?
Absolutely. It really was not something that I ever intended to do, not something that I set out to do. I started my career in sports at ESPN and then with the Philadelphia Eagles, and had always thought that that was just kind of the route I was going to continue. But actually, kind of circumstances during my career led me to start empowHERed. One of the reasons that I left ESPN was because of sexual harassment and a toxic environment, which I know we had talked about a little bit previously when we first met. But that is kind of what sparked it, in the back of my head. I was like, I'd like to do more for women looking to break into the sports industry, because it's a very male-dominated space still, and there aren't a lot of resources, there's not a lot of transparency, and there's not a lot of mentorship or even kind of inclusion even from other women in the space. A lot of times there's kind of this scarcity mindset that exists. So I was fortunate to have my co-founder, one of my best friends, Samantha Ward. She and I met at ESPN as interns. She has also spent her career in the sports industry. She was with the Boston Red Sox, and we had always talked about kind of doing something together. So we started empowHERed a little over a year ago at this point as a way, at first it was going to kind of be a side project. We were like, we want to start this company as a way to create this community of mentors, of, transparency, providing educational resources, webinars, that type of thing. And it kind of blew up, took off from there just because of, there was a real need for it. So it wasn't something that I ever intended to do or set out to do, but it was something, it had always been in the back of my mind. I need to do more just based on my experiences and kind of what I went through at ESPN, and wanting to share that with a larger audience and make sure it doesn't happen to other women, and that they're prepared and know what to expect going into this industry. So that's kind of where it came from, but it was not something that I ever initially intended or started out thinking I was going to be doing.
So you don't come from a long line of entrepreneurs or anything like that?
No, I do not. But, both my parents, my mom was a teacher, my dad works in business, but it was just something that kind of came about, like I said, a little over a year ago at this point. And it was a lot of interviewing other people who had done it, doing a lot of research on my own. Sam and I doing research. Her dad actually runs his own company, so we talked to him a lot. He provided a lot of resources and help and support, but it was not something that I came from or knew a lot about before doing it.
Yeah. So what drew you to a career in sports? What was the what was the draw there?
Yeah, I grew up always loving sports, as a lot of people do. Played soccer my entire life and knew that I loved being around the game. And it wasn't really until high school I started, my dad would drive me to school, and we'd listen to Mike and Mike in the morning, and he would always come up with like fun trivia questions, sports stats that he'd quiz me on. And that's how I started my career in, sports statistics with ESPN, but it wasn't something that I even knew was available to me. A lot of times you see like, oh, women are sideline reporters, and you don't necessarily see them in other areas. So I wasn't sure. I was like, I don't know. I think I want to be, the sports journalism route potentially. But then the summer before my senior year, my mom sent me, actually during my junior year, my mom sent me a link to this internship that was like a stats and info group internship. And she's like, you would love this. You'd be great at it. You're just doing research. You're looking up stats. It's what you and your dad do already. So that's what drew me. I knew I wanted to somehow be around sports, but I was thinking kind of the sports writing, sports journalism side of things, because I didn't see a whole lot of opportunities elsewhere. But yeah, I think that passion just came from growing up playing soccer, growing up in the Philly area, being a big sports fan, big Notre Dame football fan, like I was just always around it. My whole family are big fans, and I knew that I wanted to kind of do something on the business side there.
So that was in your blood. Sports was in your blood
Yes,
from a very young age. That sounds like, for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah, and now you spent some, and you kind of glossed over it in the introduction, right? You spent some time at some really iconic companies in the sports industry, like ESPN, Philadelphia Eagles. What did your time spent there teach you?
A lot of lessons, definitely, especially. So I mentioned I got the internship with ESPN. I did that this summer before my senior year, and then was offered a full-time role to come back once I graduated. And I had loved my internship. It was, 10 weeks in Bristol, Connecticut. You're working on the main campus there. You're in the studio working on SportsCenter and some of these shows like I grew up watching. So it was very cool. I loved what I was doing. But when I came back full time, it was after the first round of layoffs there. So a lot of the management was different. I was one of 2 women in a department of about 50 or so. And I still loved the work. I loved what I was doing. It was long hours. It was overnight. You're not working a traditional schedule. You're working when live sports are going on. But it got to the point, slowly started out as kind of misogynistic comments here and there, like a manager who, I think I shared this story with you. I was in a college football meeting, like where we're pitching ideas, and it's me and probably 15 other men and our male manager. And I had pitched a storyline about Notre Dame team, a top 10 matchup between Notre Dame and NC State, where Notre Dame had 2 offensive linemen who ended up going top 10. NC State had Bradley Chubb, defensive end, who ended up going in the first round that year. And I talked about the battle in the trenches and how this was a really good matchup, and it was going to come down to this offensive line versus defensive line battle. And my manager started laughing after I finished talking, and I wasn't sure what I was like. I don't know what's going on. And he goes, "I'm sorry." He's like, "It's just so funny to hear a woman talk about the nitty gritty details of football and say things like the battle in the trenches." He's like, "They don't usually know that stuff." And then all the guys in the room laughed with him, guys who I considered my friends, like my coworkers. And I just remember that was very upsetting to me, especially as a 22-year-old. Like, I didn't say anything. I didn't know how to respond to that. There were other comments, I would talk about Mike Trout being my favorite baseball player. And I had a manager say, he's like, "Oh, you just think he's hot." And I was like, "No, I can provide all the statistics to why he's my favorite player. And would you say this to a man who said?" It just was little things like that, seemed little at the time, because they eventually progressed to like actual harassment, which it took me a long time to even talk about that or even use that word, because I know other people have gone through so much. But I had a manager who would use our one-on-ones to talk about his sex life, and he would tell me that I needed to set him up with my roommate, that my quarterly review depended on it. He tried to get me, we had a group outing in West Hartford, a department outing, and then everybody went back to his place. Everyone had parked there, and he tried to get me to come upstairs to his bedroom to get my review. And I refused, and I waited in the doorway because I wanted to get it at work, and he insisted that I come in. So I stood at the doorway, and he showed up. He's like, "Well, my laptop's upstairs." And then he came to the top of the stairs and wasn't wearing pants. And I was like 22. I was shocked. I still get upset talking about it right now. I apologize. I ran out of there, cried the whole way home, didn't know what to do, and was also not sure if that's what the sports industry was like. Because I'd had, I went to the University of Delaware. I had a great professor there who, talked. I was the only woman in my classes. All the other majors in my grade were men. And he used to say, "It's going to be more difficult for you. There's going to be things that you're going to have to, unfortunately, work twice as hard, or things are going to be more difficult." And I was like, is this what he meant by that? Is this what the sports industry in general is? Should I be leaving altogether? So I was, I got to the point where I got actually physically ill because of it. I still love the work I was doing. I love the college football, research, but I just felt like I dreaded going in. I hated that environment. There was one other woman in the department at the time who was going through the same thing, was dealing with a lot from the same manager. And so thankfully I had her, and I talked to her through a lot of it. But I just I didn't know what to do from there. And for so long, I think the biggest lesson I learned, because I struggled, I did go to HR, and then was kind of told well, that's not the manager that we know. And it was very much swept under the rug. And that was a learning experience for me too. But I think the biggest thing I learned was that your mental health is never worth your job.
Right.
I can't leave because this is such a huge name. I spent my whole career or my whole life telling people the dream job is to work for ESPN. Like, what is it going to look like if I leave? What are my friends going to think? Obviously my parents support me, but like, what is my extended family going to think? Oh, why did she leave after a year, 2 years, when this is all she talked about? And I think once I did leave and I got into a much better situation, the biggest learning thing I tell people all the time is like, never think that the brand is so big that you can't leave. Don't get so swept up in that. Because I wish I had left sooner, just because it was months of like getting like physically ill and dreading going in. And as soon as I left, and I did find, a culture, really, it was very much team organization dependent. I found a culture that was much, much better. I was like, okay, that's not how it has to be. It was just a very, very good learning experience for me, kind of leaving that environment. So, but yeah, that was a hard lesson to learn right out of college.
Yeah, and listen, I am sorry for those experiences, but very appreciative for you sharing them. And I know that it was extremely powerful when you did share them in front of that group at Drexel University for the student athletes that were there, and really anybody who was affiliated with sports who were in attendance. So thank you for that. I mean, what are your goals now? Through empowHERed and having these conversations and being very vulnerable and upfront. What are your goals trying to obtain by doing that, by having these conversations?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because at first, like I said, when I first left, I, for the longest time, didn't want to talk about it because I thought that I tried to go to HR. I tried to improve the situation for myself and for the other, woman. We hired another woman while I was there in the department, but I didn't feel like once I left, I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I was embarrassed. Part of me felt like maybe it was my fault because HR had suggested like, well, you need to set clear boundaries. Like, you need to tell your manager not to talk about his sex life. And I was like, I did. I don't know what more I could have done there. But
Right.
So it was very much like kind of me blaming myself for a long time. And then really only within the last couple of years, like right before COVID, I had seen a professor from Temple University, actually. She had done research on sexual harassment, women's experiences with sexual harassment in the sports industry. And so I reached out to her because I saw her quoted in an article. And I just said, hey, like, I love the work that you're doing. Like, as somebody who's experienced this in the industry, like, I really love what you're doing. If there's any way I could support, like, please let me know. And that ended up, she responded, which I was like surprised by. And she was like, I'd love to talk to you. Maybe we can collaborate on a research project. And then we had the opportunity to do that. And we interviewed a lot of women who had gone through similar situations to what I had gone through, experienced their own kind of basically gone through something similar in this industry. And that really sparked to me. I was like, I think I need to talk about it. As much as, like, as difficult as it was, I was interviewed for that project that we did. And that was like, even just coding other people's responses, I like found myself getting upset, and it was almost a cathartic experience, realizing like I wasn't the only one to go through it, that others are, as terrible as that sounds. But I was like,
right.
I would like to do something, we need to do more to make sure other women coming up are kind of protected from that, know not what they're getting into, but know what to expect, know that this is not normal, that you should be leaving, know that there are other women out there you can talk to, because that was another thing. I felt very alone about it during the whole experience. So that kind of sparked with empowHERed. We decided we wanted to kind of focus on 3 different things: education, exposure, and then empowerment. So the education piece, we wanted to provide kind of educating women both on the realities of the sports industry and also the different roles and opportunities available. So like I said, I didn't even know sports statistics was a path until I kind of went down that road.
Right.
So we do, part of that is weekly webinars. We interview women in the space, and they share their experiences kind of coming up through the industry. They share what their actual role is, their day-to-day, how they came to be in that position. And then we also, exposure is a big piece of it as well. So trying to make sure that women are connected to roles and job shadowing opportunities. So we partner with different leagues and teams and try to provide those. And same thing, the empowerment piece is just like, we will do, mental health webinars, or we did a leadership development summit with the Philadelphia Union, where we were able to go into the stadium and provide different kind of leadership trainings. And it's just very much built on community. And so that's what kind of inspired it, this like desire to provide more transparency. And Sam, my co-founder, I mentioned, she came from the Red Sox, and she dealt with a not a sexual harassment experience, but she dealt with a female manager who was very possessive and kind of had this scarcity mindset we talk about, and wasn't looking to help grow other women in that space or support them. And we were like, we never want to be like that. We want to kind of provide and create the opposite of that. So that's really where that came from.
All right. One of the things that you mentioned earlier, and I remember you talking about it when we were there, was, how you shared that during this, time that you were having these issues with the manager and, the experiences you were having, you didn't realize, your words, that your symptoms that you were going through and the way you were feeling could be, a result of mental health. You thought it was like a physical or some kind of physical ailment, and didn't really have that tie back to mental health. And, as our listeners know, mental health is something that's extremely important to me and something I talk about very often. How do you think we continue to educate in that realm so that people do understand that there is a direct link between our physical health and our mental health, so that others who may be struggling like you were can kind of make that tie, rather than having to investigate maybe down various areas that lead them not to an answer, rather than getting them there much more quickly as a result?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, I had no idea. At first I was like, man, I've been sick but as it continued to go on, they're like, there's nothing, we're not finding anything. A doctor didn't even diagnose me, and it was going on for months. So I think really, because like at that point, I mean, this isn't that long ago now, 2016, 2017, but still, even at that point, I felt like there weren't a whole lot of conversations around mental health, especially in the workplace. So it was not something that ever occurred to me. Actually, my little sister is the one who first brought it up to me. She was in high school at the time, and she was like, it could be related to just the stress and anxiety of what you're dealing with every day. So I think normalizing conversations, and I think we have come a long way in the last couple of years, but kind of normalizing these conversations, rather than, for so long it was this culture of just go, 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 like this burnout. It leads to burnout. And even if you're not dealing with the harassment piece, but you're just expected to be on call 24/7, that can lead to these kind of mental health issues and challenges. So I think kind of normalizing talking about it, checking in on not just your family and your friends, your coworkers, if it's a really stressful time, that's really what helped me. Like I said, I had another woman in the department who unfortunately was going through the same thing, but we had each other to talk to about it. I had Sam, and I would call, I had my friends from home, and I would tell them stories about work, and I'd be like, they'd be like, Megan, that's not okay. That's not normal. And I was like, well, no, that's not even the bad. I'm getting to the bad part of the story. And they're like, no, what you just said. I was like, that's nothing compared to wait till I tell you what happened the next day. And they're like, no, that's not okay. That's not normal. You shouldn't be getting sick. So I think just being able to have those conversations, and I think it really, from an organizational level standpoint, having supports in place and kind of education, because yes, you can have a therapist or a counselor who's available. But if people don't know that that's available, if they don't know that they have somebody they can go talk to, it's not very useful. So I think kind of continuing to have conversations, just all of us being comfortable having those conversations and not making mental health a taboo subject. And then from an organizational standpoint, trying to make sure that you're providing the supports and educating people on the resources that are available to them.
Yeah, I think those are great points. And, what advice, obviously you had struggled at work. You were trying to, tell this individual and, various individuals, the person themselves, HR, et cetera, and you kind of, you went unheard for quite a while. What advice do you have for others out there that might be experiencing something similar? Maybe not exactly the same, but just in general, they're not being heard at work for whatever reason. What advice do you have for them in order to potentially be heard in their current role?
I'd say keep looking for someone to listen. I talked to multiple people. I talked to multiple other managers about the situation. I had my direct manager actually threaten me with retaliation, but I was like, I can't, there's nothing worse. At this point, I did not want to be fired. I was so afraid to lose my job, but I was also in such a stage there. I was like, it can't get much worse than right now. Like, I'm getting sick every day. I'm, 6 hours from my family. I don't have consecutive off days or time to even go see them. So just finding people who would listen. Like I said, my friends were like, this is not normal, or like calling Sam and being able to just cry to her, like as I was updating my resume to look for other jobs. So even if you're not being heard in the moment, like continue to, there needs to be an outlet, even if it's not HR, even if it's not somebody at work who's listening, finding those people who will be there and support you. And also don't be afraid to leave. If there's no one there, somebody should listen. Somebody should care about this. If they don't, I think it speaks to the larger culture, and it's not the place you want to be anyway. And so I know it can be difficult. I was there for several months, like looking for another job, but just having those people that I could talk to, my friends, my family members who supported me, and knowing that was something that, like, I could leave. I wasn't stuck here forever. I was like, I need to, if I've got to get out, I've got to do it. So I think that was the biggest thing. So don't be afraid to leave. And that also taught me the importance of, when you are looking for other roles, asking about culture, like talking to other people who work there, who would be in the same position as you, looking at their mental health resources. Do they actually do things to support employees and empower them to speak up? And just culture became such, it was not something I ever considered kind of coming out of college. And now it's something that it's the biggest thing if I work with people, knowing the culture and knowing that it's going to be something that, an environment that I want to be in.
Sure. So what, I don't think you mentioned it. I don't even know if you mentioned it last time when I saw you speak to that group, but how did you and Sam come to know each other? Did you know each other before, or did you meet while working together in the sports industry? How did that all come together?
We were actually both, the summer before our senior year, we were both part of ESPN's summer intern class in Bristol, and we were randomly roomed together. And like I said, she was in with ESPNW in kind of the sports marketing and content creation. So she worked most of the other interns worked normal, like 9 to 5s, but I worked usually 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., depending on the day. And, but somehow we just immediately hit it off. We got along great. We worked together on an intern pitch project that we won, got the chance to travel with College Game Day our senior year, and we're just constantly together and just became really good friends. I think we have a very similar mindset, work ethic, and just that kind of drew us together, and we've been best friends ever since. She went to UNC, I went to Delaware, but we stayed in touch, obviously, the whole time, and kind of have been a support system for one another. She's one of my only female friends in the industry when I first started out, the only other female I knew. So we've kind of stayed close because of that, and she's just one of my best friends.
So that internship was almost meant to be. It was,
yes.
Very, although it led you down a path of the experiences you went through, which are, terrible. Had you not had her, it could have gone a very different way, because it sounds like she was really somebody that you leaned on and really helped you work through this. And now you're looking together to help other women not experience the same thing, or be able to navigate it maybe a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually had this conversation just the other week where I said, I was like, because we were in an apartment full of 9 girls total. And I was like, imagine if we'd been roomed with other people. I can't imagine not having her in my life. So yes, and I'm actually very grateful for my time at ESPN, because not only did it give me Sam, I met my husband there. I developed, like I said, it helped me I learned so much about what I wanted in a workplace, and how I could advocate for other women. I think it really shaped who I am today. So I actually am, at the time I was very stressed. It was not a great environment, but I'm so grateful for everything now looking back, because yes, I definitely got 2 of my best friends out of it, and my husband and Sam, and I got who I've become. A lot of my values have kind of been shaped through that experience.
Wow. Now, I know you mentioned those 3 kind of pillars or 3 avenues that empowHERed was looking to operate in. What's the ultimate, mission of the organization, and, where do you see it going over the next 1, 3, 5 years?
Yeah. So our goal is really to create more opportunities and provide professional development for women looking to break into or advance in the sports industry. We also work with female athletes. So right now, we work with a lot of college partners with their sport management, sport journalism departments to provide, like we said, those webinars, the mentor program, in-person events for the students. But we also work with, we're partnered with the National Women's Soccer League to work with their athletes athletes because, as you know, most female athletes, unlike a lot of male athletes, have to have a post-playing career. There's something that they're doing after they're done playing, unless you're Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe. So we work with them to provide professional development for the players, to set up job shadows and internships for them during the off season, and really help them get prepared for what they want to do, what they want their life after soccer, after their sport to look like. So I think our goal is to continue to, we're talking to some other leagues, and our goal is to really expand our offerings for female athletes and what we're going to be doing to support them as they transition. And I think 5 years from now, the goal is to kind of continue to grow our team. Right now, it's me and Sam. We have one other person on staff and several consultants, but the goal is to kind of continue to grow so that we can make an impact in more schools with more women, and really see this kind of grow so that our current members become mentors down the road, mentors for members, 5-10 years from now, and just kind of continue to be that pipeline into the sports industry, provide the development that gets women into roles as they help them expand their networks, as they look and find positions where they want to be in the sports industry. So I think that that's kind of our plan for right now, really honing in on the college space, but also continuing to provide those resources and build out our programming for female athletes, because that's such an underserved market as well. So much is done while you're playing, but not a lot is done. People don't think about what you're going to be doing once you're done.
Right. Makes sense. And in all fairness, I don't think a lot of male athletes think about that either. So
yes.
Unfortunately, so there's a place for this for sure, because I think that gets lost in translation quite often. So, what would you like to share? So with the women listening now who might have a passion for getting into the sports industry, right? They're sitting here thinking that's the direction I want to go in, and I think now more than ever, we're seeing more women involved in sports, even from a management perspective, coaching. At least we're hearing about it more. So what advice do you have for them, women who are listening that have a passion to go into the sports industry?
I would say that continue to know your worth, know the qualities that you bring to the table that are unique. I think a lot of times early in my career, I thought, especially sitting in a room when it's just other, just guys and I'm the only woman there, I thought that I needed to kind of be quiet, or like I'd have an idea, but I didn't want to pitch it because I was worried about what was going to be said. So I think knowing your value and knowing the unique kind of skill set that you bring, the unique voice, perspective that you can provide, and don't let yourself kind of shrink down, like be yourself, bring yourself into that room. And I feel like I always worry when I share the story about my experience at ESPN, I don't want to deter people from going into the sports industry, because I think it's such a great space. Like I said, I found some of my best friends, like some wonderful managers. I've gone on to like work in places where the culture was wonderful. I think it's very, as with any industry, it's kind of dependent on who you're working for and the team around you. So that's my biggest fear, is I'm always worried that I'm going to deter people, but I just think I want people to know that it is a tremendous space. You can find, you can provide a lot of value by bringing your full self into that room. So I don't want people, it is still very male dominated, but I think for the women listening, like you add value, and just know that, trust in yourself and have that confidence in your voice to speak up and kind of present your ideas and bring those to the table. Because it can be hard, especially when you're first starting out, but I think there is so much opportunity to grow, and it's a wonderful, wonderful industry to be in.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I think the point that, you're driving home is, if you want to do it, go full force, know what you want to do. And there's no deterrent there, but just do it with maybe a little bit, your eyes a little bit open wider than they were when you got in, and be aware of your surroundings, so to speak. Right. So
absolutely,
I think that's key. So listen, we're all about joy, Meghan, on the Mitlin Money Mindset. And we end each of our shows by asking each of our guests the same question, which is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
I would say I had my morning smoothie, which I love. It is part of my daily routine. I always have strawberries, cauliflower. Sometimes I'll throw in a banana, protein powder, and almond milk, and it is my favorite way to start the day. And I have soccer tonight, and I play soccer 3 times a week, and those are the two things kind of start my day and end my day with a little bit of joy.
Sounds like a tremendous amount of joy. It sounds very much like an athlete, very, very regimented and on schedule. So it makes a lot of sense. So we're going to have all of your information and the information for empowHERed in the show notes. But if people want to learn more about empowHERed, learn more about you, connect with you, what's the easiest and the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to www.myempowHERed.com. It's spelled, so it's MYEMPOWHERED.com. And then that has all of our social media on there. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, it's just Meghan O'Donnell, but always looking happy to connect with people, whether you're in the sports space or not, and just kind of continue the conversation around inclusivity.
Yeah. And if you didn't catch that spelling because you're in the car or what have you, just check out the show notes. We'll have the link in there for you to click through to, so you don't have to remember the spelling. But I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing your story. It was a pleasure to see that in at the event that you did in combination with my son Zach's school's Drexel and their sports program. And I appreciate you sharing your story here, because I know that you will be impacting many people and hopefully making the sports industry and the world just a little bit better place by doing so. So thank you for doing that, Meghan. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. I was so happy to meet you and your wife, and love what you're doing and your mission as well, because it really obviously resonates with me. And I appreciate you just having this platform and providing this opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you, and enjoy your day.
Thank you. You too.